Hi, everyone. Welcome to Confidently Be You. My name is Jennifer Shlomovich, and today I am talking about caring for aging parents with my special guest, Jenn Gruber. Jenn is a certified professional coach specializing in transitions and family relationships. She loves helping overwhelmed women who wish they had more time and energy to enjoy their lives and the people they love, to gain clarity on what they really want and need. She partners with them to create and implement realistic, achievable action plans, incorporating her expertise in communicating effectively and establishing healthy boundaries. Through her practice, Jenn Gruber Coaching, she enjoys providing one-on-one and group coaching, leading workshops and support groups, and facilitating conversations around sensitive topics. Jenn, welcome.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
It's great to have you here. So, before we dive into our really deep and important topic today, what inspired you to get into the work that you do?
Around the same time I became certified as a coach, my dad had recently passed away. He had Alzheimer's, and I had spent the last several years moving him into a memory care facility and spending time with him there. Um, at the same time, my parents had been divorced for many years, but at the same time, my mom was downsizing from the house she had been in for 50 years to a smaller condo. And although she, was and is very healthy, that was a whole challenge in and of itself.
Mhm.
And I realized as I was going through these things with both of my parents that everywhere I went, whether it was my yoga studio or my book club or one of my daughter's field hockey games, I heard the same conversations everywhere. Anytime the topic of parents came up, everyone wanted to share, like, oh my gosh, let me tell you what's going on in my family. And you're not going to believe what I have to deal with. And everyone was sharing stories about about their parents kind of declining health, or just their parents transitioning to a new chapter of their lives and how that was impacting them. And
Mhm.
I realized that while there is while there are plenty of professionals out there who support seniors in a whole variety of different ways, and there are also resources for full-time caregivers, there really isn't a lot of support for people who are kind of like me, just in this space of being like an adult child of a parent who just needs more,
Mhm.
and who people like me who find themselves just kind of overwhelmed by all the options that are out there, by just really not knowing what to address first or where to turn. So yeah, so that's what brought me to this specialty area.
Yeah, it sounds like you had a lot going on because you had parents who were going through different experiences, and then you're trying to
Yeah.
support them with what was going on with each of them, but then also you had your day-to-day responsibilities and everything else. So it's understandable that that was a really challenging time. I know, like, as we get older, our parents get older, and myself and a lot of people who I know are also, it's like the common conversation piece now
Right,
as
right.
I've gotten
And what I
older.
was what I was finding, relationships have always been what I've been most drawn to, connecting with people, helping people to feel more connected to one another. And I realized that what I was hearing from everyone around me was that they were dealing with so much overwhelm and sadness and frustration and stress and resentment, sometimes all of these things. They really were missing out on opportunities to connect with their parents. They
Mm.
weren't enjoying the time they were spending with them because they were so overwhelmed by all of the negative stuff that was going on. And that's where I really saw an opportunity to kind of step in and help, um, really just help change their perspective, and help to just create a different perspective, a different opportunity for them.
Yeah, that's really important to do because when we focus on what's wrong with a situation, it's easy to get lost up in with that.
Exactly.
And by focusing on what you can create, yeah, of course it's not the ideal as your parents get older. Holidays are not going to be the same. their ability to do certain things may not be the same, and or they may not even be able to remember
Right.
family
Right.
in the case of, Alzheimer's and dementia. And so, um, but finding ways to create memories that are meaningful with all that, that sounds very special, because it's important to make the best of whatever time you have, which
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
hard to do, especially when you're so stressed. So it sounds like great work that you are doing.
Yeah.
So
Thanks.
what are some common challenges? You shared some of them already, but like what are some common challenges that, you know, older children experience with their parents as they get older?
Yeah. So some of the most common things are just, first of all, noticing your parents becoming more forgetful.
Mhm.
A lot of times people will kind of gradually just notice things that seem a little bit off, forgetfulness. And then that kind of ties into worrying about a parent's safety, their ability to live independently. A lot of times, kids feel like their parents are at a point where they either need more help in their home, or where they potentially maybe should start thinking about not living independently anymore, or just downsizing. And then a lot of times people run into resistance from their parents, and their
Mhm.
parents not wanting to have conversations about it, not wanting to talk about it, and also not wanting to move, not wanting to accept help from anyone, not wanting to bring in caretakers. Those are really common issues. Another huge one is feeling like a parent maybe shouldn't be driving any longer. Uh,
Mm.
that's a really tough conversation to have. It gets even more complicated when there are siblings who aren't on the same page. If I, for example, thought, oh, it's probably time for my dad to not be on the road anymore, and I had a sister who was like, that's ridiculous. We can't take his independence away. That gets really complicated. Um, other thing, oh, like parents not wanting to get rid of things, that's really
Mm.
common. I can't move out of this house because it holds so many memories, and if I moved someplace smaller, what's going to happen to all of my things? And a lot of times people want things that have a lot of sentimental value to stay in the family.
Right.
um, and so it gets complicated when none of the kids or grandkids want, the whole China service that has been in the family for years, or the, Oriental rugs, or whatever it is that has meaning to the parents. And so what happens is they a lot of times feel like, because their things aren't valued by their family members, um, uh, they believe that translates to, like, I don't have any value, or the family history isn't valued.
Mm.
So just a lot of conflict over, like, what's going to happen to all the things that no one wants. That can create a lot of issues too. So those are some of the kind of top things that I hear from clients.
Yeah, I'm familiar with some of that, and also from other friends who I've talked to with dealing with it. Like the letting go of things seems to be a huge challenge,
Yeah.
because yeah, it's understandable that these things are special and they mean a lot to you,
Right.
but then it's like there's the expectations that you have on others for it, and then also being realistic, like, do you really need these things
Right. Right.
in your next
Exactly.
chapter of what you're going to be doing in your life? And so it sounds like there's a big fear of just letting go in general, whether it's things or
Hmm.
letting go of who you used to be,
Yep.
and now stepping into this new identity of, oh my God, I can't do the things that I can't do anymore, which I'm sure is very difficult for someone who's aging.
Definitely letting go of independence.
Yeah.
And like you said, just letting go of the identity that they're used to having. And a lot of um, kind of life purpose gets tied up in that. If
Mhm.
I don't have my independence, and I'm not the same person that I used to be, what's the point? What am I, how am I filling my time? What am I here for? So So yeah, it makes a lot of sense that like it's a tough transition for people. And I think that sometimes as children, we are, very well-meaning and think that we can see clearly what's good for our parents and what's
Right.
not good for them, what they need, what they don't need. And they don't necessarily agree with us or appreciate our telling them what's best for them or what they need. Um, so yeah, how we communicate that is really important.
It's a role reversal because when we were teenagers and they knew what was best for us and we didn't want to listen.
Exactly. And they think, even though we think we may think we know what's best for them, it might be a role reversal for us, but for them, it's not. They're still the parent. They still know, you're not going to, how do you know what's best for me?
Yeah, exactly. I'm sure that's difficult for parents to let go of that
Right.
and change their mindset around that.
Definitely.
So, with all of that, there's a lot of complicated feelings
Right.
around these different things where it comes to guilt, shame, frustration, grief. So, what is the best way to deal with complicated feelings?
So the number one best way, the thing that I always tell people is just to recognize that whatever you're feeling is normal. It's
Mhm.
natural. It's totally understandable that you feel that way. If you're, feeling sad, and of course, like watching somebody, especially if there's a cognitive decline, it's heartbreaking to watch someone decline cognitively, and it's gonna be sad.
Sure.
And if you're feeling, I don't know, annoyed or impatient that, it takes your parent a lot longer to get somewhere. It doesn't mean that you're a bad person because you're feeling impatient. It's because you've got limited time, and you're trying to be understanding, but it's, it's impacting you. So that makes sense. And if you feel like you're giving them good guidance and they're resistant to that, they don't want to accept your help, that's frustrating. Whatever you're feeling is is understandable, is normal. And the probably most ineffective way that we can deal with those feelings is to judge ourselves for them, to think like, oh, okay, I know I shouldn't be feeling impatient. I know I should be feeling grateful. I know I should be more patient with my mom. I know, she's done so much for me. I know, I owe it to her to do this now. I really, I shouldn't be, I shouldn't get mad at her. I shouldn't, whatever. Um,
Mhm.
because then when we do that, we're kind of taking these already negative, kind of uncomfortable feelings, and we're stacking that self-judgment on top of it. And then we're just in this negative space that becomes really hard to get out of. Whereas when we instead can just like show ourselves a little grace and compassion and be like, okay, of course, like it makes sense that I feel this way, but I can feel sad, and I can also be compassionate, or I can feel impatient. Just because I'm impatient doesn't mean that I'm not a good person. I can be
Yeah.
impatient and be loving and empathetic and whatever. You have space for, we can feel lots of different things at the same time. But when we really let ourselves feel those feelings without judging ourselves for feeling that way, that's where we have, just allow ourselves space for both both the positive and the negative.
Yeah, you have to feel it to heal it.
Yeah.
And suppressing, I learned the hard way in life that suppressing feelings is not the way to do it. It eventually it sneaks up on you because it builds up. You think it's not there, but it's below the surface, and you don't realize it until you acknowledge it, and then you're like, "Oh my God."
Right, right. Well,
And,
and what happens is if you're in that space where you're like, oh, okay, I'm spending the afternoon with my mom, and I know I should be trying to enjoy it. I know I should be grateful, but it's just so hard. Then you're spending your energy thinking about that. Whereas if you're looking at it like, okay, like this is a little tough, but um, but we can also, have a nice conversation, and we can also, it's easier to find space to find that connection, I guess.
Yeah, and it's meeting them where they're at. And
Yeah,
instead of being frustrated that they're not where they are, it's, well, where are they now and how can we make the most of it? And
exactly,
and just
exactly.
work through that.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, and this, we it's so important to not forget that we're humans and
yeah.
our feelings are part of that human experience. And so
Mhm.
when you beat yourself up for having feelings that you're, or you have a quick thought of something because you're frustrated, it's all in how you respond to it, because we all have thoughts, we all get annoyed, we all get frustrated. It's the having it is not the bad part, it's how you react to it. And
Right,
if you do get frustrated and you respond to your parent in a frustrated way, then you can always start over again and
right,
just course correct. And you know what, I feel bad for how I responded to my parent on this. How would I have liked to have responded in the future? And then you can take that opportunity to prepare and
right.
work through those feelings. Because I find, and I do this with my clients too, is when you prepare for mishaps, when those mishaps could potentially arise, they're not going to necessarily happen, because then you've already worked out that plan and how to
Right.
navigate that.
Right, exactly. And like you said, like changing perspective a little bit, like, like your parents don't want to be slower than they used to be.
Yeah.
They don't want to feel like they're burdens. So the more frustration you express, a lot of times the more negatively they may respond, the more defensive they might get, the more frustrated they are. And then you're in this cycle that really just becomes just unfortunate.
Right. And then it just pushes uh, everyone that starts pushing each other away
Right.
because
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
so that brings me to my next big question. What tips do you have for having difficult conversations with aging
Yeah.
parents?
So, um, so I have lots of tips for that. The first one I would say is to think about going into the conversation, think about what you hope to accomplish during the
Mm-hmm.
conversation. Because a lot of times we may have a pretty lofty goal in mind. I want to convince my mom that she shouldn't be living alone anymore, let's say. Um, and that might not necessarily be something that can be accomplished in one situation. I mean, excuse me, in one conversation. I think
Mm-hmm.
certainly there are things, times when you're really at a crisis point where a decision has to be made quickly. And if that's the case, then that's your goal. You want this decision to be made in this conversation. But sometimes a conversation can be used just for kind of planting a seed or just kind of introducing an idea with the understanding in your own mind that there's going to be follow-up conversations later, and you just want to kind of plant that little seed just to kind of start the ball rolling a little bit. Um, the next thing that's really important is choosing a time and place that's conducive to having a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people think like, okay, we need to talk in person and it needs to be a family meeting, and everyone's going to be together at Thanksgiving. So that's the perfect time to do it. And that's sometimes is the case. It may be that, for some families, talking in person might be the best option. Sometimes sometimes, a holiday is a good time, but a lot of times holidays are not the most relaxing time for families. Sometimes holidays, when families get together, sometimes, tensions arise. There can be, they can be emotional sometimes. And,
Mm-hmm.
um, well, let's say, for example, I'm going to Thanksgiving dinner at my sister's house, and she's serving dinner for 30 people, and I'm like, okay, we need to have a family meeting. Let's, can you come, if she's already stressed out and
Yeah.
on edge, then that's probably not going to be the best time to do it. Same with funerals, everybody might be together, but like emotions are running high, so it may not necessarily be the best time or place to have that conversation. So choosing a time and place that's really conducive is important. The next thing I would say is um, approach conversations with like curiosity and really
Hmm.
see them as an opportunity to listen to your parents and hear where they're coming from, as opposed to an opportunity to tell them what you think they need to do. Everyone wants to feel seen and heard and valued and respected. And as much as you can convey that in your communication, the more you can convey that, the more positive the exchange generally is going to be. Just really listening, giving them an opportunity to talk and listening to what they're saying. Kind of along the same lines, like letting go of assumptions that you've had. Um,
Mhm.
you may, for example, have a situation where your mom has always said, like, I am always hosting Thanksgiving at my house. I never want to let go of that. I always want it to be here. And I always, want to be the one who roasts the turkey. And I love having all the grandchildren at my house. And if you reach a point where maybe you're feeling like that's too much for her, um, approaching the conversation by saying, like, Mom, you know what? Thanksgiving is too much for you. I think we need to move it somewhere else this year. Might be unnecessary, because it may be that even though she's always said that, she may be realizing herself that
Mhm.
it might be time to turn it over to someone else. So instead of assuming that what she's always said still holds true, kind of introducing the conversation by saying, like, I was thinking about Thanksgiving, it's coming up, and just kind of seeing where that goes, just to allow for the opportunity for her to maybe say something that you're not expecting. Um, Asking why is really important.
Hmm.
So we talked before about like not wanting to let go of things. So I had a client whose mom had this punch bowl that she had never used. It was this big, the kids all thought it was ugly. It was hideous. It was taking up a lot of space, this huge punch bowl. And like, okay, Mom, there's no room for the punch bowl. You never use it. We've got to get rid of it. And instead, if you um, bring up the conversation about the punch bowl by saying, you know what, Mom, I know this punch bowl is really important to you. Like, what is it about the punch bowl that makes it so important
Hmm.
to really give her the opportunity to say either, you know what, it was a wedding present from a friend that I've lost touch with, or I've never used it, but I've always wanted to. I've always had this vision of having a big party and using it, or like, I don't know, it's like still in great shape and it's wasteful to get rid of things that still have
Mhm.
use, that are still useful. So just asking, and then once she's answered the question and you know why, then you can address that a little bit more. If you've always wanted to use it, why don't we have that party? We'll have a party, use the punch bowl,
Yeah.
and then, or or you can follow it up by kind of like repeating back what she said, um, well, yeah, I know that you've never been a wasteful person, and so it makes sense that you wouldn't want to get rid of something that still is useful. You can um, just really kind of show that demonstrate that you're listening and you're hearing what they say. Um, so just using that as an opportunity for your parent to feel like you're more on their team as opposed to working against them on that. Um, Another suggestion I have is to, pay attention to things that your parent says. If they say something like, oh, I'm not as young as I used to be. A lot of times, like a natural response would be, to say, like, what are you talking about? You're in great shape. You're still healthy. And while that sounds really reassuring and positive, we we could be missing an opportunity to just open up a conversation by saying, yeah, none of us are as young as we used to be. What changes are you noticing, or what what do you mean by that? And just really, anytime they give us a little comment or something that could be an opening for a conversation, I think it's great to take advantage of those. I think another big tip I have is to notice your own reaction in the conversations. If you notice yourself really starting to feel triggered, annoyed, frustrated, whatever, like, take a deep breath, notice how you're feeling, and then really decide, like, okay, do we need to continue this conversation now? Maybe this is a good time to take a step back and we can revisit this at another time, rather than letting the conversation escalate if it's going in that direction. And then the final thing I would say is, if you're having a conversation that's particularly uncomfortable, it's really important to just end it by saying, I'm sorry, I hurt your feelings, or I'm sorry, whatever. But I brought this up because I love you and I care about you. And just to always end with that reassurance that, this is why we're having the conversation. It's because I love you and I care about you. And just to really try to end on a positive note by providing that reassurance.
Thanks for sharing all those tips, because those are really good tips. And yeah, it's so important to be mindful of their feelings and set the stage as best you can for the conversation. Like, I really think that, yeah, it's a great idea to plant the seeds, like stagger something. Maybe you can give yourself an idea of, okay, what would part one of this conversation look like? And then what would the next, part two of this conversation look like? Because then they're not going to feel as overwhelmed, because just bringing something up to them could feel overwhelming. So by doing that in like steps and stages, that makes a lot of sense. And then, family gatherings, that can be challenging, especially if people live long distance. But if as you were talking, and I was thinking about that, because like my family lives all over the country, and if you have to have that conversation during a holiday visit, maybe not do it during the actual events.
Right.
Like maybe breakfast after Thanksgiving is a little more.
And to let people know in advance too. I think exactly what you said. Like, if you kind of let people know, okay, so Friday morning at breakfast, do you think we could all
like if you've got siblings and you want to have this conversation, then enjoy the holiday piece. And then jump in there. And it's really important what you said about checking in with your own feelings, because I think that's something that can slip through the cracks so easily. And the next thing you know, you feel some type of emotional state building. And so, it's important to put a pause on it. And you could find another, because when you start to feel in a triggered space, it's going to be harder and harder to have a tactful conversation. Eventually your emotions will take over at some point.
Right. Exactly.
So, it's so important to be mindful of what your feelings are and check in, because, if it doesn't feel like, why force something if it's not the right moment for yourself to do it? Take a walk, get back to it, excuse yourself, find a way to hey, I need to take a break.
Care of yourself, calm down a little.
I need to take a break, and then let's continue this. So those are very important tips that you shared, because it's all very important things to be mindful of, that if you don't think about it and you just jump in, you
Yeah.
kind of realize after the fact, oh, I probably could have handled this better, but I'm not sure.
Right.
But
Yeah. A
having,
great conversation starter can be, like you were talking about, like how to introduce ideas, um, is sharing, like talking about like a related issue, but not necessarily about your exact situation. Like instead of
Mhm.
me telling my mom, like, don't you think this house is too big for you? And saying like, I you told me your friend Carol moved to a condo. Like, how is that going for her? Or you told me
Yeah.
Ellie isn't hosting Thanksgiving this year. Like how did that work for her? Or I was talking to a friend of mine whose mom just got, I don't know, whatever, moved to a retirement community.
Right.
Use it like starting the conversation by talking about things that don't feel quite as personal.
Yeah.
By virtue of that, don't feel quite as threatening, I think, is a really nice way to introduce things. Even, things I've seen, I saw this on TV. Oh my gosh, I saw a story on TV about how there's like scammers who are taking advantage of seniors and making phone calls and asking for their banking information. Have you ever heard of that, or do you have any friends who have encountered that? Like if that's something that I'm worried about, introducing it that way instead of saying like, mom, make sure you never give
You know what? You're absolutely right. That it probably lands much better
yeah.
um than than just, again, barking at them, because again, when we were teenagers and they just told us.
Right. It feels less threatening. It feels a little
Yeah.
bit more respectful. It feels like we're just sharing with them instead of trying to control them.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for sharing all those tips. Those are, I think, really helpful to keep in mind when approaching those types of conversations.
Yeah.
And what are some tips that you have for restoring life balance for caring for aging parents? I can imagine there's a lot of boundaries that need to be considered, and just setting some type of expectations when navigating all of that, because it can be very overwhelming navigating all these different things.
It can be so overwhelming. And I think it's really important to realize that there are lots of resources out there and you don't have to do everything yourself. I think
Hmm.
um, that it's common for people to feel like, oh my gosh, I have to take care of this because no one else can do it. I owe it to my parents, to
Mm.
really feel like just with things like figuring out Medicare, like, okay, I know all the information is online. Like I can do a Google search. I'm a smart person. I can figure out insurance, and I should be able to work this out on my own. But it is so complicated, and there's just so many intricacies. And
Yeah.
there's people out there, there's social workers and there's Medicare experts out there. And there's people who, rather than, you know, rather than me spending days and days and hours online trying to like decipher and just like pick my way through all of the information, I could, make one or two phone calls and have someone say like, okay, this is what
Mhm.
you need to know. These are the steps you need to take. And I think sometimes we just put so much pressure on ourselves
Yeah.
to feel like we need to figure it all out and we don't want to ask for help. And when we realize that, oh my gosh, like, of course I don't understand this. It's like, it's not, it's not my area of expertise. And there's a lot of things, like speaking for myself, there's a lot of things I'm really good at. And being knowledgeable about Medicare still for me isn't one of them. I like have lots of resources that I can refer my clients to, lots of people
Mhm.
who can help them. That's not something that I ever envision myself being really well versed in. So just knowing that there's resources out there and being comfortable um, with asking for help. There's just so many people, so much support that I never realized when I was helping my dad. There's daily money managers who,
Oh,
people
wow.
who will like take care of like paying all the bills, like handling someone's mail and paying their bills. And I think sometimes we think like, ugh, like it really isn't that complicated and it doesn't take that much time. I should be able to do it. Um, which may be true, but if you're doing it, you're taking time away from some other aspect
Yeah.
of your life. So really getting clear with yourself on what your priorities are, what are the most important things, and what can I take off my plate. Um, and then you can start there as far as deciding what boundaries you want to set.
That's a very important tip because it can be very hard to like delegate. I know I'm guilty of that and just other things where I've gotten better at it, but it's like, oh, I can tough it out. I can just do this. What's the big deal? I'll just take care of it. But like you said, your time could be allocated elsewhere. Why burn yourself out? And I think also many of us feel shame around taking time out to do nothing.
Yes.
But that is the most important thing you can be doing because even if it's just 30 minutes for yourself, and I try to do this daily, where I try to at least carve out 30 minutes of either going for a walk or just staring out the window or just journaling or some type of time for myself for 30 minutes because we're always busy, we're always doing little things, and that doing nothing is what's going to help you be productive and not burn out so fast. And so, yeah, it's absolutely important. And there's no shame in delegating tasks to somebody else who's better equipped to handle the
Right.
nuances of that particular area. Um, because yeah, absolutely, it's so important because why burn yourself out? Your parent needs you, you need you. And if you're working and you have a family, you're not going to be good to anybody if you're just too burnt out because you're trying to take care of everything at once.
Right, right, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, and a lot of times people say, well, okay, there's absolutely no way I can take 30 minutes out for myself. I just don't have, the time to do. That's not possible. And maybe that's the case, but can you take 5 minutes? Can you take 10 minutes? Do
Yeah,
you have a commute time in the car where you can, just like put your favorite music on, or call a friend
absolutely.
from the car? Use that time to do something that helps you to just tap into some positive energy and helps you to feel good. Can you pick up carry out instead of cooking dinner one night?
Yeah,
Can you might not have time to go to a spa and get a massage, but can you like take a bath or take an extra long shower, or find any little way to just spend a little extra time on yourself? Because
absolutely.
really, like you said, that refueling, taking the time to refuel yourself is so important, because if you're depleted, that's when you then you're left with nothing to give your parents, your
Yeah.
kids, your partner, your job, all of the other um, um, things in your life where you're trying to invest your energy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and there's so many ways of doing that. So you can listen to a podcast, you can listen to music, listen to a book on, an audio book,
Yeah,
while you're
yeah,
driving around, something that's going to inspire you and help you while you're busy running around.
yeah. Something that just gives you like a tiny little break from all the other like jumble of things that are going on in your head.
Absolutely. Um, and earlier in our conversation, you mentioned opportunities for enjoyment with aging parents. So, what are some tips that you could share about enjoying those moments with your parents when you're dealing with these difficult circumstances?
Yeah. Um, so one of the issues that a lot of people have when they get older is they start to feel like they don't have a purpose anymore.
Mhm.
They're not useful any longer. They've kind of passed the part of their lives where they were contributing, and they feel like nobody really wants their help anymore. There's nothing that they can do to give back any longer. So
Mhm.
finding ways that you can help your parent to feel valued and useful is really nice when you can find ways of doing that. So things like um, asking them for help with maybe like if you have family pictures, if they like looking at family pictures, going through
Mhm.
them together and saying like, okay, tell me who these people are and what was going on in this picture, or where was this taken. That can be a really nice way of connecting. If, let's say, your mom was a great cook or your dad was a woodworker or whatever, asking them like, oh, how did you do that? And can you help? Asking them for tips or guidance on
Mhm.
things that they've been good at in their life. Asking them for advice, even if it's not really specific, just like sharing like, oh my gosh, mom, I like my boss is driving me crazy. She keeps, um, you know, asking me, she knows that I'm supposed to leave at 5 o'clock every day, but she keeps asking me to stay late. Like, did you ever have anything like that happen to you? Did
Mhm.
people ever ask you to work late or, oh my gosh, the kids aren't aren't like going to bed when they're supposed to. Like, what did you do when we stayed up late and wouldn't go to bed? Just
Yeah.
little like asking for advice, asking them for help and guidance, kind of tapping into them as a resource, I think is a great way of connecting. Um, I think intergenerational things, if you have kids, like making sure that the that the kids and grandparents are connected to each other,
Yeah.
finding things for them to do together, especially if it's something that your parent has enjoyed throughout their life. If it's gardening together or doing a puzzle or I don't know, like music is great, listening to music together. That's maybe something from their past or watching an old movie. Things that help them to, um, things that are going to kind of stir up memories that they're able to
Yeah.
share is a really nice way of connecting.
That's really great. Yeah, it's true. When you do ask for some kind of advice, or how that what did they do when they handled a specific situation?
Yeah,
I never really thought about that before, but yeah, it's such an easy way to help them feel useful because I think it's so easy to think, oh, they can't, help out with certain things, maybe physically,
right,
but by
right,
giving them something that they can offer by just asking questions. I
right.
think it also, again, supports the feeling seen, feeling heard, feeling useful, feeling you're part of your family. Um, and that sounds like something really important to do in
Yeah,
fostering all of those transitions.
exactly. All those things. Yeah.
Great. And before we wrap up, are there any resources that you would like to recommend that people could check out that could help them dealing with this?
Yeah. So I think the Alzheimer's Association has a great website with lots of resources.
Hmm.
I would recommend that for anyone who is dealing with a parent with dementia or cognitive decline. Um, AARP also is a great resource. They've got lots of really great articles and things on their website. A couple books that I love for anyone with cognitive decline. The 36-Hour Day by Nancy Mace is a great one.
Hmm.
And for just kind of more general planning, elder care planning, this is called The Complete Elder Care Planner by Joy Laverde.
Hmm.
I love that one too. So those are some things that I that I recommend often to clients. Another website that's great is fivewishes.org, FIVE wishes.org. And that is Five Wishes offers a kind of format for writing up like a medical directive, but also gives you a format for sharing your wishes with
Mm,
your loved ones. If I guess in preparation for potentially a time when you're not able to speak for yourself, where it's a way for you to make your wishes known. And it's really nice because it's available online and anyone can do it at any point in their life, at any age. And um, so if at whatever age you're at, you do it for yourself, it can be a great kind of way to introduce the conversation with your parents. It's like,
yeah.
I found this website and I did this Five Wishes. It just made me feel so much better that I know now if something were to happen to me, my husband, my family, everybody knows, it's all in writing what I want. Have you done anything like that? Or,
Mm,
do you want me to help you do it too? And that way, it introduces it not as like, this is something you need to do because you're old and you're going to die soon, but just like,
right.
this is something that is, a gift you can give yourself and your family. And I did it, and it would be great if you did it too. So I think that's a really great resource.
Yeah, it sounds like a really good one. Thank you for sharing all that. And I'm also going to include all the links in the notes
Okay,
below the video. So this
awesome.
way, anyone watching who wants to check those out can easily click on them.
Perfect.
So what's the best way for people to connect with you?
So the best way is through my website, www.jenngruber.org. It's JENN GRUBER.org. Or I'm sorry, it's .com. www.jenngruber.com.
Got it.
JENNGRUBER.com. There's a contact form there. My phone number is also on the site and my email address. So any of those ways are great ways of getting in touch. I would love to connect with anyone. I offer free complimentary discovery calls for any new clients, anyone who just wants to explore whether working together might be a good option.
Great. I'll also include that link as well. Well, Jen,
Perfect.
thank you so much for joining me today to talk about this really important topic. I think you shared a lot of great tips. And I want to thank you all for watching as well. And take care, and I'll see you next time. Bye.
Thanks so much.